Hey Cindy, hey Nicholas, it's Sheldon here.
Hello.
I said hello. I was muted. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I just wanted to make sure you knew I was here because my video is off today.
Nick, just to confirm, you were able to get into the account with no problem after the reset link?
Yep, I was able to get in like instantly pretty much. Thank you.
Perfect. Just wanted to make sure. Thank you. Hey, John, how are you?
I'm good, Cindy. How are you?
Good. Happy it's Friday.
I'm hoping you're done after this meeting or shortly thereafter.
We scheduled a 4:30 meeting and I don't know why we did that.
I think that was my fault. Sorry, Cindy. It was the best time everyone could get together. But then I guess what really is best, right?
Yeah, I think nobody had a meeting scheduled for 4:30 on a Friday, so we were able to make it happen, but that's okay.
Funny how that works.
Right there. Denise and Jason should be on shortly. We were all on another call right before this, so.
Who calls meetings at 3:30 on Fridays?
I was just saying, Sheldon called the meeting at 4:30 on a Friday.
Who calls meetings at 4:30?
It's Sheldon's fault. It's Sheldon's fault. Please forgive me.
Cindy will be off camera during the 4:30 meeting, secretly, having a drink of something.
It is Cinco de Mayo.
You're right. It is.
Yeah. I will throw the agenda in the chat. If anybody has trouble getting into that, let me know.
Hi, everyone. Sorry, having some linking issues. Wait for my next invite, Cindy.
Wait, what do you mean?
That was interesting, Cindy.
That was.
Oh, there he is.
Jason is many places at once, apparently. Perfect. The only person we are missing is Amherst, but I'm gonna say let's go ahead and get started. I'm not sure
Yeah,
where she is.
yeah.
Oh, did we just lose Jason?
Am I here?
Yes, you're there.
You're here.
Good Lord. Sheldon, we got to fix this.
You got it.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
All right. We threw the agenda in the chat, but for the folks who came on a little later, there it is. Oh, perfect. So to begin with, we wanted to talk through a little bit on just the general commission structure. We have the subcommittees, which we have talked about and started working with a little bit, and we've envisioned those to be kind of the working groups for the commission. And then we are looking, the executive order set up an advisory council that will be populated with scholars, any organizational partners, and that will be kind of folks who are affiliated with the commission but aren't necessarily doing the work of the commission, but people that we can help connect with one another. Fundraising will remain with NCTH for FOIA reasons, and we'll have a separate group that will be working with us on that. Merle, did you say something? You're muted. Sorry. No.
Oh,
Cindy, she dropped something in the chat saying her internet connection is unstable, so she may be in.
Oh,
ah,
thank you. I missed the chat. So all of these different groups make sense within this structure. One of the questions that we had when putting this together was how we want to proceed with the youth council in particular. We initially envisioned it as a subcommittee, but I don't know what we saw in terms of the work that the youth council would be doing besides engaging the youth around Connecticut in some way. So does it make more sense for that to be part of an advisory council, its own group with its own kind of purpose separate from these other things? And we just wanted to get a sense of what everyone thought.
And definitely would appreciate your insight, Nicholas, given your particular connection to this and the likelihood of a subcommittee responsibility falling largely on your lap.
If it were to become a subcommittee, I would have no problem at all chairing that and being like a really, really, really big part of it. Regardless of where it does fall, I am 100% all in on it because I think conveying what we're trying to do here to people my age and younger is like a huge deal, especially in like history classes. So I don't really have a preference on where it would go, but I am 100% willing to help wherever you all feel it's best to be.
so if we call it a separate youth, and by the way, I know one of our concerns is it sort of spills into what Steve Armstrong's group does, which is basically education, but that leaves out a lot of people because a lot of people aren't in college or aren't in, where we were going to go beyond, what did we define it as, pre-K till through college, right, Steve? I think that.
Yeah.
I don't have my list in front of me.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, I mean, our concern is that still there's a whole world of people out there that we can reach differently that may not be in an educational setting, for example. So Nicholas, I think that's great that you're willing to chair this thing, whatever it is. And it may be a subcommittee of this group, but I think we're envisioning perhaps inviting other people in to help that are not on the commission, which is another whole piece of this discussion tonight. So.
And Nicholas, I'm sorry, Denise.
Go
My
ahead.
apologies.
No, go ahead. I'm done.
Nicholas, I'm wondering, and this is maybe getting too deep in the woods, but in the weeds, what is that metaphor?
Either way,
in the
Steve.
weed, in the weeds, if perhaps it may be wise, if you're doing that as a committee, a subcommittee, that one or two of your members maybe want to also serve as on the education committee as well. So that, you could relay back to your group, and our groups could perhaps on some things work together.
I like that idea a lot because I feel like we're going to be kind of overlapping a lot of our work. So if we work together now and kind of like officialize that, I think it's going to be a lot easier for in the long run.
Okay.
And Ariane, I think one of our other questions, I believe Jason mentioned that Secretary Thomas is working on some civics initiatives tied to students. Can you share a little bit about what that might be and if that would tie into this on some level? Or am I catching you completely off guard?
Yeah, I mean, of course, we have red, white, and blue schools. And I think we're working, with Steve and others to kind of develop additional programs. At this point, maybe a little bit more of our focus is on families in general. So kind of using youth as a way to bring the adults out as well, and therefore educating them, kind of almost by accident in a sense, like inviting them to join their kids and then educating the families as a whole. So that's a little bit more or that has been a little bit more of our focus, but we're also working on some, specifically youth related initiatives. So that's kind of TBD at this point.
And the red, white, and blue honors recognizes schools who do a good job of promoting civic education. And that's co-sponsored with the Secretary of State's office and the Department of Education.
Yeah, and I think we'd like to try to make that more robust as well, that program moving forward.
Agreed.
And Cindy, the old State House is also doing a number of things. Their most notable kid program is Kid Governor, which is being picked up by other states. And again, that focuses on 5th grade, which is, we always think of civics in high school, but there's a whole world of stuff we can do in K5, K6. But they do the Kid Governor, and they, of course, have lots of visitations from kids. The Connecticut Historical Society is doing things with classroom visits and original documents and all this sort of thing. Right, Rob? So there's a number of the groups represented here that are doing civic education in an educational setting. Nick, I thought, had a great idea at the very beginning when he started talking about contacting young people through social media. I mean, that's sort of a whole different world of things to do that we don't think of so much. And I thought that was a great idea and probably something that needs development, so I don't know how we go about doing that, how we get lists of people, how we get started getting followers and that sort of thing. But I'm hoping Nick and maybe some people he can recruit outside the commission could help us with that.
Yeah, I'm not really like the biggest tech savvy person, but I do have friends and I do know people who are like really into it. So I think once we get started, maybe on Instagram and Facebook, I think are the two big ones.
Yeah.
We can kind of start gaining followers, especially if Governor Lamont were to follow the account, because then that would make it pop up on a bunch of other people's like feeds as like advertisement, not really advertisement, but kind of like a suggested account. And I know Instagram is a feature now where if you pay like a set amount of money per month, you can become a verified account, which like a lot of government agencies are verified accounts. And it kind of just shows the public that we're a legit program that, they can follow and they can trust, because Instagram does like a background check or something on it just to make sure we're 100% legit and the public will know that. So there's a couple ways you can go about it. It's just a matter of finding who exactly we want to start it and like facilitate it as we go.
Got it.
Merle? Your hand is raised.
Hello, everyone.
Hey, Merle.
Thought we'd start with greeting. I am curious as to understand what is the charge of the youth council. I think that would help me think a little bit more clearly about what role, what function, what purpose, and how.
Cindy, did we crafted some language around that initially, right? Or no?
Did not do the youth council because other than engaging youth, which is a very broad term, there was nothing in the executive order to kind of point us in a direction. So I think part of the question right now is also, what is the charge?
Although, yeah.
Engagement is important, but how are we defining that?
And I will say there was some language on the floor of the House when it was debated as a bill, where they specifically said that youth must be included in the commission. Now, the bill didn't pass, but there is certainly interest in making sure that the next generation is spoken to, shall we say. So you're right, there's no charge, but there certainly is a charge to us to include youth in our thinking and activities.
Is there any reason we couldn't embed the youth council or subcommittee within community and organizational engagement and ensure that Nick and his peers have voice in much of what we're doing? Or in any other subcommittee for that matter?
I would say I feel that we need to recruit some members for this group outside of the commission. Obviously, there aren't enough young people on the commission to make that happen. And so I think that ought to be part of what we do, somehow engage. I like the idea of embedding it in the community outreach part, because that will mean there will be a community level of young people involved and we could build from there. I mean, that's kind of been my thinking all along, is that this starts as a grassroots thing and grows up rather than top down. So that's not a bad idea, Jason, from my perspective, but I do think it needs to have something very separate in a way too. Because I consider it probably one of our primary jobs is to carry this forward, you know, the next 250 years kind of idea. And so for that, you have to be talking to people, the young people, and having them renew that commitment as well.
Merle, I think I probably completely avoided answering your question. Does it move anything for you? It certainly didn't get to particulars of what the youth council or subcommittee might do, but in terms of where its function might lie.
Yeah, you know, no, sorry, Jason. But because I think that a lot of times, and you know, in full transparency, I consider myself a youth development practitioner first and foremost in regards to any professional work I've done. I hear a lot of what we're going to do to the youth, but I'm not really sure how we're going to engage young people to do right what they need to do or what they desire to do in the context of this larger commission. So I understand the focus on building right the next generation and how education plays a role in that and so on and so forth. But I mean, you know, I remain curious as to, you know, I'll just ask, say, Nicholas, what might young people, or in your particular case, right? I'm not going to essentialize you, and certainly you don't represent all young people, right? You're you. But if you're thinking about what your dream was when you joined this would be, how you envisioned or imagined it would be. I'd be curious to hear that and see if that sparks some inspiration for the group in general.
So my big thing is I'm always been really big into teaching history and more like not just remembering dates, but as more of a personal level to kind of get you to connect to it and think about it and developing like critical thinking and stuff like that. So I thought like I guess I just envisioned my goal kind of just being to convey that same way of teaching, I guess you could say, and that same like structure of education to the youth. So we're not just trying to remember dates, and history is not seen as a boring subject for kids, but it's more so seen as like a critical thinking. It's going to challenge our mind, but it's going to be really interesting to always think about how things turned out and how they could have gone. And if this person wasn't here, how would it have gone? And kind of stuff like that. So I've always thought big picture. So I thought I could bring my experience from my Hawaii experience when I went to go study Pearl Harbor as a part of the 2022 Sacrifice for Freedom World War II in the Pacific Student Teacher Institute. I know it's a really long name, but that really kind of got that whole understanding history in a broad picture kind of thing. That really kind of brought that to me. And ever since that experience, it's always been something I've wanted to grow.
Nicholas, I don't know what else your committee would do, but we need some representation from your committee or subcommittee on education to help us plan activities that would reflect what you just said.
Okay. Yeah, I can. I was
Thank you
thinking.
for that.
I was thinking maybe going to some of the other schools, like sending their principals an email or something like that, setting up like an application kind of a process, because I want to get people from, all, different opinions, different views, different experiences. I want to get a really like diverse and really like wide ranging cabinet, I guess you could call it, because I want to have a voice from everybody. I want everybody's opinions to be different. I don't want to have a bunch of people around who are like me. So I don't want to handpick the kind of people. So if we can set up some kind of Google form or something that we can send to schools to have kids apply, I think that would be really helpful in putting together the best committee we can for this.
That sounds good. Why history matters, sort of, as Merle is saying in her comments. Yeah.
And I wonder if, we've talked a little bit about other organizations like Made by Us that are more youth-centered. I'm wondering if, Nicholas and his peers might be a liaison for the commission to groups like this.
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about Made by Us and the civic season stuff that they've been doing as well. I think that they offer a really nice model for using social media to engage, sort of they're kind of focused on Gen Z, but engaging younger people in kind of thinking about history in this context that isn't just like, like we were saying, like, what people think history is, a set of dates and things like that. And I've been thinking a lot about that. There was a coalition call yesterday that I missed because I'm getting over the flu, as is my whole family. Hooray. Excuse me. But, it seems to me that, thinking about a lot of what you've been talking about, Nicholas, there's an opportunity here for us to kind of use your social media savvy to not just have that top-down approach, but to really get this bottom-up input, engaging younger people and inviting their ideas and what they want to see, like around these big ideas of freedom, what freedom means to them. I think you could have some prompts that come through on social media to engage people in the way that Made by Us and the Civic Season folks have been doing, to kind of inform our work really, and make this an opportunity for input and engagement, because it seems to me that that's really the best way to engage people, is to get them involved by sharing, by giving them a voice. So I think that that seems to me something that I would really love to do. I don't really feel like the best person to do it myself. But I see that there are really good models out there that we could utilize perhaps to guide our work if that seems like something folks would be interested in.
I think this is great. I think this gives us a lot of direction, and maybe the next step we'll put together a rough outline of what the charge could be and send it around to this group and get some feedback on that. So in trying to keep with time, I'm going to move on to kind of thinking about subcommittee assignments. So we have talked a lot about subcommittee members and trying to get people who are not on the commission involved in the work that we're doing. So I'm hoping we can talk a little bit about how we want that process to look and whether we are inviting, do we want subcommittee members to be invitation only? Do we want to allow people from the public to kind of apply or send a letter of interest if they're interested in getting involved? How are we going to make decisions if we choose someone for a subcommittee? Some of those questions. Steve?
Yeah, I believe, if I'm correct, way back at the beginning of this, subcommittee chairs were instructed to reach out to do that. And I mean, I reached out to people, a great group of diverse people, I thought, from college, high school, all kinds of groups. And I've got 15 people that had agreed to me to be part of this. I don't know what the procedure is to get them part of it. They just all said that, and I said I would be back to them. This was perhaps a couple months ago, but I wonder, is there a formal way to invite people? That's maybe the question you're asking. Is there a formal way to ask people in? Is there an approval process beyond the committee chairs, subcommittee chairs? I don't know that.
That's exactly what I'm asking. And so
Yeah,
I think,
I'm asking, I'm validating your question.
yeah,
Yeah, I think our first question is that a good idea? I mean, we don't want to backtrack on anything you've already done, and I think the answer is yes. I think every subcommittee could benefit from members, especially those who will actually do some work on the committee structure. But I do think that there should be some way we can know who they are. Maybe it would be a letter that they could send to the commission, maybe with a bio, or maybe you could facilitate that for us. But I do think there should be some way we know who exactly is part of this structure. That's just my sense.
Yeah, and that's something that Ariane and Stephen and I spoke about in the governance side of things when we met a couple months ago anyway. Although Cindy's probably going to tell me it was just on Monday.
yeah, that one was January.
Yeah.
So is it the task of the subcommittee chairs to solicit membership for our own subcommittees?
Well, personally, I think it ought to be wider than that. Maybe we could have other subcommittee chairs may have people who are interested in the education, for example. I know some people who have asked me about it, and we could submit, they could submit their names formally, with just a simple letter. It wouldn't have to be complicated, but maybe a letter of interest and a bio and simple statement of why they want to do this. And we could, as a group, we could administratively work with that subcommittee chair to say, is this a good person to be on your subcommittee? But I kind of think the subcommittee chairs ought to be the ones who make that final decision because they will know the makeup of that particular subcommittee and make sure that it's representative. How about that, buddy? I mean, because sometimes people aren't going to know people in other parts of the state, for example, or other fields that might be interested in this work. They may not even know which subcommittee they want to be on. They may just want to be involved. And so we could then decide, you know, if it gets too big and unwieldy, we would just stop taking applications, I guess, and have some other way to involve folks. But I think the subcommittee chairs honestly should be really the ones to shape that committee. Assuming we all agree that there should be some outside folks involved in some of this.
John had his hand raised first.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Cindy. So I agree that the co-chairs or the chairs of the subcommittee should do some outreach, but I do think that there should be a form maybe on our website that is manned by somebody, or administratively, that other people might be able to, well, anyone that wants to be interested, I think, should go fill out that form so that we're all aware of who has expressed interest. But there may be people that we by oversight that we might have forgotten to reach out to, that are sitting somewhere saying, yeah, I want to get involved. If we can advertise that form somehow, that would be a good way to also be transparent, right? And be open to other people that we might miss who who could bring a lot of value to these subcommittees. So I think it should be a two-pronged process in that sense.
Do you think there ought to be a limit to the number of people? I mean, you don't want these things to get too big and unwieldy. We have other structures we can create for people to be involved. For example, I'm thinking now of the sort of community level structure, which might be a little bit different than the subcommittee structure. But like I said from the beginning, I'm hoping we have someone in every town who's involved or is a contact person. And I think our problem is going to be kind of fighting people off rather than not having enough of interest. From my experience so far, I've been in a number of large groups lately, and everybody says, yeah, I want to do that. They have no idea what they're kind of wanting to do, but everyone wants to be involved, which is a very nice position to be in. But do you think there ought to be some, I don't know, limit on the number of people or not? I don't know.
I'm gonna pause on that question. Steve's has had his hand up for a little while now.
Just Cindy, a question. Is there a way right now on the website that just an individual that comes on it can sign up to be on a committee or to be involved?
No, right now there's a way to sign up for a mailing list, but not to get more involved. And that would be an easy change to make. So this idea of a form on the website, we could have that implemented by Monday or Tuesday, no problem. We just, yeah. I think something simple with contact information, a bio, possibly somewhere to upload a resume or something like that if they're interested, or if they have one available, would be an easy way to gather information about people, and then some kind of checkbox for which subcommittee they're interested in. I think that does bring us back to Denise's question about the number of people. We don't want 100%.
I was going to address just very briefly that as well. I do think any subcommittee that I've ever been on, a subcommittee of 45 people is sometimes not efficient.
Right.
So that is a consideration.
John, go ahead.
Thanks, Jason. So I don't know how to address the cap of people unless we just all sort of make a decision that the cap is X, or in a range. What I would suggest as a possibility is on the form, maybe having people, because they might be interested in multiple subcommittees or just involvement in general. So it's some way where they can prioritize what subcommittees they might want to be a part of, so that if one fills up quickly, we might find that another one takes a little bit longer to fill up for whatever reason. so we can put people on those committees. So they're not just, you know, cast aside, sorry, you didn't get the committee you wanted, you know, thanks for your interest, but there might be several fits that might be appropriate for people.
That makes a lot of sense. I'm wondering too, if the conduit you suggested earlier, John, through an application process, you know, if it could get overwhelming, I think, to Denise's point, but I also wonder, does that then become a conduit to connect people with their own towns or communities, sort of a feedback loop and a responsibility of the commission to, you know, build those relationships within communities?
Yeah, if I can, I mean, I think that there are a couple of things that I would add here. I mean, certainly, I think that's one thing that we can, I mean, I think if we can think about this form as a like capturing interest form, not just a subcommittee sign up form, then it might do a little bit more work for us. We might need to think about it a little bit more, and think about the information we'd want to gather from individuals who express interest in getting involved in the work of the commission more. But the form can actually convey information about the different ways that people can get involved now, down the road, at the state level, locally, and also communicate to them what their responsibilities might look like. Because also, if we want to prevent the subcommittees from getting too large, we should make it clear that there are work responsibilities involved in this. It's not just signing up to come to a few meetings, right? You know, so I think if we're concerned about those growing too much, we emphasize the workload on being involved in a subcommittee, potentially, you know, just like make it clear that you're expected to do X, Y, and Z. Think about the time commitment, you know, that we want to communicate there, but then also indicate other options for, you know, other ways to get involved. And then we can use this as a way of kind of gauging community interest, but also kind of managing it from the get-go so that things don't get unwieldy. So I think if we're thoughtful about how we design that form, or maybe there's more than one, there's like a sign up for a subcommittee form, but there's a page that's like, these are the different ways to get involved and what they look like and what your responsibilities might look like, that would be a way to kind of deal with some of those issues up front, hopefully. Those are just a couple of things I was thinking of there, but I do really like the idea of having a way for people to get involved, either through becoming a part of a subcommittee that is open, like, you know, we just put it out there and like see what we get. We're not really going to know, I think, in a lot of ways what the interest level is going to be, but I really do think that this is a nice way of going back to Denise's point about like the local leveling engagement. Obviously, we want to get the town that they're in, right? You know, where they live and other things that they're involved in. So there might be information, if we're trying to think about connecting it to that local level coordination, there's information that we'd want in that form that we wouldn't necessarily need for like signing up for a subcommittee. So I think we just want to think about how we'd want to design that form so that we can capture all that information at once. And then we can use our judgment to think about what the best fit for that person might be.
I'll go to Steve next.
I think I'm reiterating what Amra said. If somebody takes the time to fill out a form and expressed interest, even if they're not a fit for any of the subcommittees, I think we help the person getting, if they want to get involved in some way, let's assist in getting them involved in some way.
And John.
Thanks, Cindy. Just one last thought, because I'm sure you want to move on. I'm struggling with the idea of putting a hard cap number on each subcommittee. So I encourage us all to think about this, because one subcommittee can't pretend to know the workload of another subcommittee. So some subcommittees might be better with a smaller group, others might benefit from a larger number. And so I would just, maybe for our next meeting or something for us to think about as subcommittee chairs, is what number might be appropriate for what we envision our workload to be or our mission to be, etc., and work around those numbers. And then once we've determined that, you know, maybe put that on the website somewhere so that it's out there and it's transparent, that, you know, this subcommittee will consist of 10 to 12 people. This one will be, you know, 15 to 20, whatever it is. I would just think that that's something that we should think about rather than maybe coming up with an answer today.
Yeah, I think that sounds great. And we'll put together a lot of information based on this conversation and send it out Monday or Tuesday to everybody, so that we can continue to work on this. Sorry, I'm reading, Merle just added a comment. So I think people join things when they're invited to by personal connections, relationships, and can vouch for why participating would be worthy. Could we leverage local institutions to make invitations along with the open call? This might be helpful in expanding the audience reached. And I think that's a really good point. I think everyone here and everyone on the commission has vast networks of people who will be interested in the commission on different levels. So I think having all of the commissioners really reach out to those personal connections and then kind of the next level from there. So as we put together these subcommittees, just a quick reminder to reach out to me if you do schedule any meetings. We'll need to use this Zoom just to make it easy to get the recordings and get them posted online and continue that. On the agenda, there are subcommittee charges that were based on what was in the executive order. I think you are all welcome to update these charges based on the work that the commission has done a lot of work in the last year since the executive order was released. So using that to kind of inform what these subcommittee charges are, it's really important. So feel free to make changes, and also as you're making changes, thinking about how many people and what type of people we will need to kind of make that work happen. And then the other ask that we're putting out to the subcommittee chairs is to work on an action plan based on what was in the governor's report. There's a link to it in the agenda. The action plan was pretty straightforward in terms of what we put in there. The action plan that we provided to the governor was much more big picture, focused on everything that the commission would do. But as we move ahead and try to really make sure that the subcommittees are doing some of the work for the commission, we're asking subcommittee chairs to really think about what each subcommittee should be accomplishing in the next year, what some of those benchmarks might be, when it might be happening, and also what resources we'll need, whether that's financial resources or information that we should be reaching out to other people for, so that we can start to connect the dots on what those resources are and find ways to provide them to each of the subcommittees. Does that all make sense? Okay. And then in terms of resources needed for the toolkit, I was hoping that some of the subcommittee chairs might volunteer to start to put together some of these. We talked about creating some kind of IDEA rubric, a contact list of organizations that we should that we want to keep involved as we move forward. Lists for where people can find primary sources, reading lists, scholar lists. CTH staff has started some of these, but we'd love to get additional input into it.
Cindy, do we have those available to share? I know Greg was concerned that some of it was kind of limiting, but it's just a baseline.
Mhm.
I think it's something we could share with the group, and you know, it can be added, changed, manipulated.
Yeah. They are not up yet, but I can have them up on Monday so that everybody can have access to them and start adding to those.
When do we want these action plans completed, Cindy?
That's a great question. I think started by the July meeting. I think it's a lot to ask for them to be completed right away. But the hope is that by that July meeting, most of the meeting will be subcommittees reporting back to the commission. I'm sure there will be some other big discussions, but the hope is that the work of the subcommittee will be what's up for discussion instead of.
Okay. So we
just-
should plan on having a subcommittee meeting between now and the July meeting,
Yeah,
perhaps to discuss those action plans.
yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
And I just want to clarify the time period that you said for like the next year. So like what period of time should the action plan cover? Like, are we going through?
I would say through July of 24.
Okay.
It coincides with a lot of our fiscal years, but at that point, we'll be 2 years into the commission and 2 years away from 2026. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Ah!
exactly.
That's how I feel all the time right now. So I just keep saying that.
And then for the, yeah, Steve.
I have some materials I'd like to include, in the toolkit, so count me in on that.
That's perfect. If you want to send them my way,
Mhm.
that would be great. Was that a hand roll? Yeah.
Yeah, I just have a quick question on the idea rubric for projects that the commission will consider supporting, offering funding, or projects for helping people who are developing projects know whether or not they've embedded IDEA into that's not right, IDEA into their process.
I think it's the latter. I'm
Okay.
thinking back to the workshop and the conversation we were having. And I
Okay.
think what we were really talking about was something to kind of, as people are developing their programs and projects, something that can guide them in thinking about making it as accessible and open as possible. And knowing, yeah.
So is it a guide or is it an assessment tool? Because those things would be two different things, right? A rubric generally is going to be a tool that you use to assess what you're doing, versus are we looking to also put out an IDEA guide as well? I'm sorry, Jonathan, I shouldn't have said that, because then that means work.
Why not? it's a valid question. It's a valid question, Merle.
Realize I'm like, what are you doing? Don't unmute.
Well, in the spirit of inclusion, can it be both? I mean, both would have value to what this subcommittee might offer to our publics, right? In terms of what kind of guide, I mean, this is really about guidance to the broadest possible audience and how we engage them and support them going forward in their respective work. So if there's an evaluative piece, that's helpful, but also that sort of guide in the toolkit, I think, is also really important.
And Jason, if I could just add to that, to the degree that, you know, the IDEA concept is spread throughout all of the subcommittees, I think there is a lot of value to, and we can learn a lot from what the other subcommittees are doing that might inform what we would put in that kind of information. Does that make sense, Merle? Am I speaking out of turn now?
No. I think I understand. I think I understand where you're going with that. I guess now I'm wondering, chicken, egg, cart, horse. Is the IDEA offering the guidance and then folks are measuring against that? Or are we learning what people are doing and embedding that? Or it could be an iterative process, it doesn't have to be either or. So I'm just trying to think about how to orient my thinking around how we approach the work going out the gate.
I think it might, the way I envision it is, I think it makes sense for us to maybe put a list, put some stuff together to give to the other subcommittees to guide them to what we think. But as they develop their workflow and we can alter what, but we can give them a foundation.
No, this is all great. And we have 10
Can
minutes.
I add just one thing to that? I mean, this is just as I'm thinking about goals for the next year and things we want to do. I know that, we've talked a lot about this idea of having point people in the towns. I think, one of the things that I really want to ensure that we do with all of our local outreach too, is be able to kind of help folks on the local level be able to capture a diverse group within their own community to get buy-in to do stuff locally, perhaps groups that they aren't already, that the individual who, is really gung-ho about doing this in the town may not already be aware of. And I'm not really sure exactly what that looks like. I've mostly studied all of this work and kind of the history of community development work and things like that, but all the things that can go wrong when you have one point person and they have a group of people and all the people who are already kind of powerful within that community just sort of reifies the structures that are there. And I don't think that's a part of the goal of the commission. The goal of the commission is to, think outside, those existing power structures and, bring in other people. So I don't really know what that guidance looks like, but from my subcommittee standpoint, that's what I'm trying to think about is how do we offer that sort of guidance? What would that look like to a local community? What kind of guidance can we give them to say, don't just talk to the people you already know. That's not doing the work that we're hoping for here. So any help that our subcommittee can have in that guidance, I think would be really helpful. Because that's something that I think will be really important for what we're doing.
Yeah. I saw Ariane.
Yeah, I was going to say something similar, and that I feel like the toolkit is really the most kind of crucial aspect of what we're talking about, because I really think it will shape a lot of the programs that come, that actually happen. And, if we have 5 scholars on the list, we'll probably have these scholars all over the state and end up having the same conversation everywhere. So I think this should really be a priority. And I don't know if there's a way to, mandate or, it really encourage the whole commission to really be a part of this toolkit and to really add to it.
Yeah, Cindy?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a very important question, Amherst, and I've, if I can think of it in specific, for example, I've been talking with, we're also on the side trying to form an advisory committee that will basically raise funds, for lack of a better word. And so we're talking about reaching out to, for example, the COGs as a way of reaching first selectmen and mayors. At this point, I feel like we're just trying to make people aware of this whole idea of even just communicating the idea that this is happening is a big challenge. So we were going to start with mayors and first selectmen. I was going to go around the state with the person who's agreed to be a co-chair of this group, Jonathan Harris, and there may be others. But, so thinking through what's going to happen from that, it'll be different things in different communities. But if you start, I guess, with the mayors and first selectmen, who knows who they will bring in? Probably the Historic Society, right? Local people, I don't know. So it just depends on where you do that outreach or to whom. And we're hoping to do it through a number of groups. I'll give you another example. Wednesday night, I guess it was, I was awarded by a big group, the Bar Association. The Connecticut Bar, there were 500 lawyers in the room, all from all parts of the state. And I mentioned the commission. I said, yeah, everybody asked me, what am I doing now? Well, this is what I'm doing. And do you want to get involved? Lots of people came up and said, wow, I want to do that in my town. So I think it'll be a multiple outreach system. I don't know how to decide who gets to be in charge of that in each town. I just don't know if we can control it to that extent, but we can certainly do outreach to groups and make them aware of it going on in their town. I think, for example, in terms of African-American groups, I work a lot with the Deltas. It's a group, it's a Black sorority, and they're very active in their communities, and it's a big group. So, you know, I think it'll take all of us approaching different groups that we know about or have worked with to come up with some way to get people involved locally. And it's always a big challenge to get people involved who have never done this before. You know, there are parent groups that we could enlist. I know lots of groups just because I've been trotting around the state for 30 years. But, you know, so I'm going to try to reach out to as many different groups as I can and just make presentations and say, hey, do you want to be involved, and sign them up for something, you know? And I would encourage everyone else to do the same thing. Everyone on the commission should be doing that. You know, the Secretary of State, Stephanie, she should be doing that everywhere she goes, saying, hey, we're having this celebration and be part of it. That's all I can think of to answer your question.
No, I think that's great. And I mean, I think that, you know, I'm just thinking about the mechanics of it, like down the road, like if we want to have like a point per, because presumably like if like this idea of having a point person every town, like that's hopefully going to be one person. So we're not like communicating with, you know, 169 times X, right? People, you know, just like making sure that and I think that's another nice kind of like bottom up approach that you're suggesting, where, you know, the commission is just doing that work to get people aware, and then they can be, when they're interested, like maybe they come to our forum and they would be like, here's the person in your town that you can talk to, you know, we've been working with them. So just trying to think through the mechanics of that, and I may be getting ahead of myself, but I know we have other things to do, so I'm going to hand things back to Cindy.
So I think the last thing that I wanted to touch base on, and I don't know if we're going to really be able to fully discuss it, is what we want to do about proposals that are coming to us. We've had the State Chronicles project, which is an education-based initiative, and a conference related to the 250th, asking for the commission's approval. And I don't know if we all envision the commission approving things or just kind of sharing things that are going on around the state. Do we want a process for reviewing initiatives before we share them out? I just don't know how much we want to be in the business of rubber stamping things versus just encouraging good work and sharing that good work. Steve.
I think in the absence right now of a procedure to do that, wouldn't at this point, I think the appropriate thing would be to do all we could to make people aware of events. But I'm not sure that we're not in a position right now. We have no criteria or method to endorse anything at this point. So let's find ways to publicize things that are going on already.
I guess my only thing is, and now I am speaking from the perspective of the IDEA, which is there should right be some value in the commission quote unquote endorsing something, because we know that it's aligned with the values that, you know, we're working to agree upon around a lot of different aspects, right? Commemoration, celebration, you know, but also these IDEA principles. And so I'm wondering about the value of actually putting some time and thought into that so that it can, we can, facilitate that process. Because the truth of the matter is, at least from my perspective, if there's something that would not be necessarily aligned with these values that we are espousing as a part of this commission, I don't know if I would want to personally, right, not endorse, promote it, but without, like, I think it might be worth it just from a structural point of view to put some effort or energy into that.
Or my only point is to say that to do that would be good down the road, but a criteria would have to be established to
Yep.
state the obvious.
I guess I'll just pile on. I could see with multiple organizations, K-12, higher ed, if there was a way that there was a criteria process that Connecticut 250 had its logo associated with a public program, just multiply that by all the different organizations that are out there that do public programs. That would be a great way to get the word out across the state about Connecticut 250. So I don't have an answer for what the criteria ought to be, but I agree with the previous two comments that would be a great way to get the work of this commission out there and promote programs that are consistent with the values that have been expressed.
And I guess I'll just add, if we're going down this road, I think we also need to create some alignment and clarity between the commission and Connecticut Humanities as one of the funders of what will be 250th based work. So I don't think there's a lot of daylight between, but I just want to make sure that if we create a structure for the commission, that it's reflected in the adjudication process of any grants.
Yeah, I guess I was the one that generated this question in the sense that they're coming to us. These two projects are just the beginning, I'm sure, of people coming to us and wanting us to at least look at their project. I'm quite sure that both of these projects and probably many others really want some resources to do what they want to do, which we don't have right now. We probably will in the future. So whatever we do ought to carry forward into when we do have resources. And I'm wondering exactly like how we allow the commission to look at these projects initially. For example, who do we bring this to? Do we bring it to the whole commission? Or do we see these subcommittee chairs as kind of an executive committee, if you will, that would kind of look at things first and decide if we want to bring them publicly to the whole commission or not? The teacher conference is interesting because, we have to get going on some of these things. Teaching curriculum, changing things, getting teachers to understand some of these issues that we're bringing up. It takes 2 years at least, right, Steve? I mean, it takes a while to get it approved and to get it into the curriculum. So I'm thrilled that this happens to be brought to us by Matt Warschauer, who's done much work in the social studies, and a lot of us know him from past work. I'm thrilled that he's trying to do this. He's trying to do something at Central, which is where he teaches. And, I don't know exactly what the process should be for dealing with something like Matt's request for us to look at this teacher conference he's putting together and possibly even have input and think about who the speakers should be and that sort of thing. I just don't know. So I'll throw that out there for comment.
Seems to me that maybe there's a difference between funding a program and or actively promoting it or just listing it on our website as like, this is happening. Probably maybe need an approval process for the funding and promoting piece of it, as opposed to just listing it as an event that's happening in the state.
Yeah, to be clear, the funding will go through the Humanities Council. So that's where you have this differentiation between the commission and the Humanities Council, the administrative agent for whatever funding we can raise or get from the state would go through DECD to the Humanities Council for administration. So,
And anything that CTH is funding will go through the standard grants process, and we'll layer on that once we've kind of come up with the criteria for projects that are affiliated or supported by the commission. That will just get layered on as part of that grants approval process.
So I think we would want to make that clear somehow, because if we have an advisory committee, Denise, that the sole goal is to raise funds, I think we would need to make it clear what those funds are for then. Because there will otherwise, I think, be some confusion.
Mhm.
yeah, oh, absolutely. And there probably will be different levels of funding. We're hoping maybe certain corporations might sponsor an event or an activity. Other people might be individual donors who might, create a scholarship fund. Who knows? I mean, there could be all different types of funding, but it would go through the Humanities Council process because they have the structure to do that granting. So somehow we will work together to figure all that out. And that's what we're struggling with what that structure looks like at this point. For me, the commission's job has always been basically communication and generating enthusiasm and connecting with local groups and sort of connecting the pieces that people are doing elsewhere. We might have, I'm sure we will have a couple of signature events perhaps that the commission is just doing on its own. Other states have already started doing that sort of thing. Virginia just did a convening. Virginia's commission, I think, was the one that convened the meeting in Virginia, which was a meeting of the states. So there could be things like that, but generally speaking, we will not be a granting organization. So just to be
So
clear.
in the spirit of that, Denise, I know that the National Endowment for the Humanities is already making grants for America 250 projects. So perhaps, that is one of the roles of this commission to point people in those directions. And for what it's worth, I've been in conversations with the American Association for State and Local History, as well as the American Alliance of Museums, about some advocacy efforts to try and get federal funding for the National Endowment for the Humanities, National Endowment for the Arts, and the Institute for Museum and Library Services to have special funding for content and programs. So just for what it's worth, NEH is already set up in doing that, and they don't have extra money. They've just moved some money around for programs, but I think this commission could point people to some of those opportunities if asked.
Good idea. And perhaps give some technical assistance, perhaps, I don't know. We haven't figured that out yet. I mean, we will have this group of historians and other kind of skilled professionals in this field, if you will. And, perhaps some of that could be cross-purposed.
Yeah. Thanks, Merle. And on that note, I think this all sounds great. I'm going to try to see if we can get another time for this group to get together again in early June. We'll do some work online before then, but just give us all a chance to continue these conversations, particularly before that July meeting. Denise.
Yeah, did we want to say something about when and how you are going to have your subcommittee meetings? Because I think it's important to get started on that. Is everybody clear on that or not? Should we talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I haven't done anything, so
yeah,
we should probably talk about that.
Agreed.
Yeah. Well, so, I mean, Cindy, you know the structure, but we obviously we're hoping you'll have a meeting of your subcommittee as soon as possible. we will, I guess we'll have on the website, maybe we can have some tools to help you think about this action plan. I think personally, I think what I would do if I were starting a subcommittee like this is I would just think about that structure of an action plan, and that'll give you a way to move forward. Because that should inform, and you'll know right away where the holes are. You know, oh, we don't know what those lists are or who those people are, whatever it is. And then you can start generating a conversation with us or others about how you get those resources that you need for your action plan.
Yeah.
That pretty much covered, Cindy.
Yeah, I think that sounds great. And based on this conversation, I'll put together an email on Monday with a lot more information for everybody, kind of tie together some of these resources. I'll put together a template for an action plan. And I'll also start on a form that I can send to you all for feedback so that we can get that on the website sooner rather than later. So expect an email by the end of the day on Monday. And if you can take a little time to look at that and send over any feedback you have, that would be great.
And then keep us informed of what dates you are setting these subcommittee meetings. Get that information to Cindy so that we can put that up as well. Because remember, all these things have to be FOI, very public and transparent. So even the subcommittee meetings. So if we have a calendar of when those meetings are, it would be helpful.
Yeah, and in that Google Workspace, there is a calendar that you all have access to. So you are more than welcome to add things on your own, or I can add them for you, but I'm trying to use that to keep track of everything that we have going on.
Now, does everybody have the information and contact numbers and things for their subcommittee members thus far? Yes, okay. And no, okay, so we need to get that squared away. And I know that Steve says he has already talked to some other people that he would like to have join the subcommittee. So maybe Steve, you could get them to send in some small letter of interest and a bio.
Will do.
Yeah, that would get the ball rolling on that. And I think I have sent you a couple of names myself. So we'll look at that. And I have some names for some of these other groups too. So I'll get in touch with you individually if I have people that have come to me or others that I know about that would be good candidates for your subcommittee.
Should the letters and bios go to us and then we forward them? Is that the most efficient way to do that?
What do you think, Cindy?
If you can wait until Monday and then just use that form once we have it, that way it'll all collect in one place. I think that'll be the easiest way. But I promise that I will prioritize getting that done so that you can move forward, because I know you have already had those conversations. But that will upload it all in one space where everybody will have access to it.
Cindy, is there an easy way to create mailing lists for our subcommittees, like as we form them in the workspace? As I think that would probably make it easy as well. Okay.
Yeah,
Does it already exist for the members that are on the commission?
Yeah,
Okay.
it does.
Okay, great.
And I'm hoping to get that all on the website. It probably won't be Monday. But sooner rather
Don't
than
spend your
later.
whole weekend working on this.
No,
Please.
I'm out of town all weekend, so
But, yeah,
that's not
no.
happening. So I will work on that, and I can either show people how to create that mailing list, or if not, with names and emails, I can do it for you. So
Cindy, just remember you said Monday, but you didn't say which Monday.
exactly.
Fair enough.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone, and have a great weekend.
So just for process, Cindy, do you want us to schedule the meeting and then let you know when it's going to be, and then you can send us the Zoom link and we can, okay, so that's the process, but we don't want to tell you before we've scheduled it. We just want us to schedule it. Go ahead and schedule it. Okay,
That's
great.
perfect. And we are also working on kind of a workflow for all of this for FOIA purposes. So
Right.
meeting agenda,
Yep.
so on and so forth. That will also not be done Monday, but sometime soon.
So Cindy, you and I will touch base for the special cases like mine.
Yep, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, and
Monday maybe.
maybe Tuesday.
Just,
The white guy
just not this Monday.
Fair enough.
All right.
Great, thanks.
Thanks,
Have a great
everyone.
weekend, everybody.
Good weekend. The sun may shine.
Shining here.
Here too, actually. Yeah. All right. Thanks so much.
Everyone.
All right. Bye-bye.